And it is truly a cultural mindset, especially for us that live in a democracy, because people are king. The voice of the people, the voice of God, those words founded democracy. And so we assume that if we translate that into how we walk with God, well, we have a committee vote on everything God's saying, and if 51% say this is God, that's the direction we go.
Wow.
Or the more people you can get under one roof, well, that must be where God's speaking. And that's just not the way it's done in a monarchy. We live by the edicts from the throne room of God. We don't live by man's opinion or by the popular vote. And that we really have to overcome the mindset of democracy, that it's not all done by committee. It's done by royal decree, and we line up.
Wow, that's good.
Here's where there is a misunderstanding as far as equality. It's not about equality, which is the democracy. We are equal as sons, and not if we don't understand that. After that, we are given representation. And this goes into submission. We've been trying to help people take a new look at what God actually means by submission and how it's actually a strategic tool in our hands. It's a weapon of warfare. And so, for women, we submit and we teach submission. That's the representation that we bring on the earth to the body of Christ, to the household of God, and very specifically to our husbands. We teach submission, which is a weapon for them to learn righteous rule and for righteous rule to exist. And you submit to a king. And this is strategic, and you can know and be certain that it's a very effective tool because it's been so mishandled. The enemy has seen to it that people if you say the word submission, kind of like the word curse, there's just all these mindsets just pop up, all these reactions. The ears get closed. You're suspect for saying the word that women should submit to men. And we need to have our minds renewed to, I'd say start with the fact that it is warfare. It is a tool in your hand. Maybe think about that for a minute, and you've laid down that weapon of warfare. And consider that, and for men as well.
Wow.
So
I heard spiritual fathers, spiritual sons as a timely weapon.
Yes.
And right there, I just heard submission
Yes.
as a timely weapon,
Yes.
knowing how to use that.
Yeah.
What are some of the other things you came across in talking to various groups you feel that's a timely weapon the Lord showed you?
One is, I've mentioned it before, really grasping as a weapon water baptism.
Yes.
If you're unclear on that, get clear on it. It is in the elementary doctrines. There's plenty of resources available to stand that ground. I believe, and part of what we're seeing are strategies to unravel the schemes of the enemy. Instead of taking on, each fiery dart that may come, we're actually going to go to the source. And, I really believe we're even going to have divine health restored to the holy nation. And I think that's going to come through insight and revelation, not how to have bigger and better healing ministries, lay hands on more people and they all get spontaneously healed. I believe we're getting insight and revelation on how to unwind the schemes that cause dis-ease in the body.
Very good.
That's right.
And it's not all going to be just in the natural. It's part of unraveling these schemes in our physical body is lining up spiritually, getting properly covered, getting aligned with a spiritual father and headship. I mean, how many diseases that we know of are stress either originated or exacerbated by stress? There is an ease in the body when you're properly aligned. Covering provides a shelter. I mean, spiritual fathers are given a place in the eternal heavenly realms to stand on your behalf and really shelter you. And so there's ease that can be restored to the body Women, if they understand that submission is an empowerment,
Right.
there's an ease
Yes.
versus a rigidity that says, I'll never need a man, I'll never have to rely on someone else. There's a rigidity that puts them into survival mode, which, again, to take it back to the natural, these stress disorders are because of hormones and other biochemical pathways that are all geared toward fight and flight. It's either I'm going to battle it myself or I'm going to get out of here. Right. I mean, we see this manifesting in the physical as a sign of the natural.
Right.
So these tools we're getting are not just how to take down one little battle at a time, but like I gave the example in the beginning, the revelation about spiritual fathers and sonship takes back huge territories from the enemy. Submission and properly aligning as one flesh takes back huge ground that was really given to our enemy.
Yes.
And it's because we're getting to the time where it's really time for the bride of Christ to arise on the earth. It's really time for that to be here. And so we really need the tools, not just to oh, how do I not fight with my husband more? You know, no, we need to not only, we need to set the goal post a little further down the field.
Right.
And so we're given these big tools right now. I think that's what some of this apostolic revelation, they're big tools. I think that the teaching around stages of sonship and pressing on to maturity, I think that's a big strategic weapon in our hands, because I want people to be discontent with milk. I want people to be discontent who've spent 20 years in a church and are infants that can't stand on their own as soon as any structure is removed from them, any kind of crutch. I want that discontentment, because I want them to know there is a maturity that you can have, because in the day, it's you who stands before the throne of God. And so I think instead of creating a culture of infants just going routinely to be fed and never really learning to feed themselves and stand on their own 2 feet, is a huge strategic weapon.
Yes.
So that would be another one.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus himself said in Revelations, I hate the doctrine of the Nicolaitans.
Yeah.
You know, anything that will conquer the people from coming to a state of maturity, you know, I think would definitely alert the Lord that he would definitely hate it. But some of these symptoms you mentioned as far as stress disorders, you know, even ulcers, you know, the natural interpretation, a lot of times you hear people talking about, you know, well, what are you eating?
Right.
I don't think it's about what you're eating, it's what's eating you.
Exactly.
You know, that's the key, what's actually eating you. I think you're absolutely right. I think that as we learn how to properly align ourselves with the Lord and those who the Lord has placed in our lives, a lot of that stuff will dissipate.
Absolutely.
You know, I think a lot of these disorders, I'm thinking about the book of Isaiah, you know, chapter 3 through 5, where the Lord talks about the spirit of judgment and burning. You know, he basically talks about how, in Isaiah 4:1, how women will be oppressors and children will begin to rule. You know, as a result of, you know, in the chapters before, he talks about war and men at war, and it's a sign of judgment. You know, when we see our children, you know, rising up to a point where they're not submitted to us. You know, where they're oppressing us because of their demands. And we've sort of taken that submissive role, allowing them to take a place whereby by the Lord they really don't have. And women ruling when they don't have to, you know, rule, where they can come to that place where a husband has become totally passive because of the fact that he's left that responsibility to his wife. We've seen that create Jezebel. You know, a passive husband can bring the spirit of Jezebel, you know, forward, you know. And so how important it is that we realize that that's a strong weapon. Proper alignment, I think, is a strong weapon by which God is calling for in our body. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think the other issue is that there are so many women that will say, well, my husband is really not stepping up to be the man of God that he should be. And, you know, the answer to this is a soulish answer, usually. You know, that the woman has to be more aggressive or more, you know, more pronounced in what she does and take control and all this type of thing. But, you know, the weapons that Brian and Aileen talk about, this whole concept of submission,